The recycled air of the plane hummed a dull lullaby, a stark contrast to the excitement bubbling in my chest. 2,000 miles I'd flown, from sunny Phoenix to drizzly Seattle, all to surprise my daughter, Rebecca, for her 25th birthday. I'd pictured her face, the joyous shriek, the tight hug. Instead, when I called from the baggage claim, her voice was flat, almost hesitant. "Oh, Mom, you're here. Now, Julian's setting up his new gaming rig in the spare room." My stomach dropped. "But where will I sleep?" I asked, the question hanging awkwardly in the air. "There's the couch," Rebecca replied, her voice laced with a strange mix of apology and defiance. "Julian really needs the space. This tournament is important." The taxi ride from the airport was a blur of gray skies and green trees, my initial excitement replaced by a growing unease. Rebecca's apartment building was sleek and modern, all glass and steel. I hadn't seen her new place yet, and a small, selfish part of me had been looking forward to it. Now the anticipation felt tainted, sour. "It's on the 22nd floor, Mom," Rebecca said as we stepped into the elegant lobby, her voice still lacking the usual birthday girl enthusiasm. "The view is amazing." I managed a weak smile. "I'm sure it is, sweetheart." The elevator ride was silent, the polished steel reflecting our strained expressions. As we entered the apartment, my eyes swept over the spacious living area, tastefully decorated in shades of gray and white. It truly was a beautiful space, light and airy, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city skyline. "Wow, Rebecca, this is lovely," I said sincerely, hoping to inject some positivity into the atmosphere. She gave a brief nod, then turned to a young man hunched over a complex setup of monitors and glowing keyboards in the guest room. "Julian, Mom's here," she announced. He glanced up, offering a cursory nod and a mumbled greeting before returning his attention to the screen. He didn't even stand up. "Hi, Julian," I said, trying to sound cheerful despite the sting of his dismissive behavior. He grunted in response. Rebecca busied herself with unpacking my small suitcase, placing it unceremoniously by the sofa. "Make yourself at home, Mom," she said, but her eyes flickered nervously towards Julian. "I need to help him with this. He has a big tournament coming up." I forced a smile. "Of course, darling. Don't worry about me." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of hushed whispers and the clicking of keys from the guest room. Rebecca barely emerged, except to occasionally bring Julian a plate of food or a glass of water. I sat on the plush, yet uncomfortable, sofa flipping through a magazine I hadn't the slightest interest in. The stunning city view outside the window seemed to mock my isolation. I had flown across the country to celebrate my daughter's birthday, and I felt more like an intruder than a cherished guest. Dinner was a hurried affair, takeout containers spread across the coffee table. Julian barely spoke, shoveling food into his mouth between muttered instructions to Rebecca about his gaming setup. "So, Mom," Rebecca said, attempting to make conversation, "how was your flight?" "Fine, dear," I replied, my voice tight, a little bumpy, but uneventful. I wanted to ask her how she could allow this, how she could prioritize her boyfriend's video game tournament over her own mother's visit, especially on her birthday. But the words caught in my throat. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing my hurt. After dinner, The dynamic shifted further into the absurd. Rebecca retreated to the guest room with Julian, leaving me alone in the living area. The sounds of their hushed conversation, punctuated by occasional bursts of excited shouts and frustrated groans, drifted through the closed door. It was clear I wasn't welcome. I felt a strange calmness descend over me, a quiet resolve hardening in the face of their blatant disregard. I looked round the luxurious apartment, a slow smile spreading across my face. There was something Rebecca didn't know, something that would shift the power dynamic in ways she couldn't even imagine. This beautiful apartment, this impressive building, this entire complex, it all belonged to me. I was Arlene Crawford, not just Rebecca's mother, but the sole owner of Crawford Properties. And I had a feeling Rebecca's birthday celebration was about to take a very interesting turn. Rain lashed against my face, a cold, unwelcome kiss mirroring the chill in my heart. Rebecca's words, "Julian really needs the guest room for his setup, Mom. You don't mind the couch, do you?" echoed in my ears as I stared up at the imposing glass and steel structure that housed her apartment. I'd flown 2,000 miles for her birthday, only to be relegated to the sofa. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. She had no idea. I pulled my coat tighter, the damp fabric clinging uncomfortably. This building, this gleaming monument to modern luxury, was mine. Every brick, every pane of glass, every carefully curated blade of grass in the manicured courtyard belonged to me. And yet, here I stood, feeling like a beggar at my own daughter's doorstep. The irony wasn't lost on me. I hadn't told Rebecca, hadn't told anyone. Really, it had been a quiet acquisition, a strategic investment. I'd envisioned, perhaps foolishly, a day where I'd present it to her, a symbol of my love and pride. Now that day felt very far away. A doorman, resplendent in a crisp uniform, hurried towards me, an umbrella held high. "Good evening, Mum," he said, his voice a smooth baritone. "Terrible weather, isn't it?" "It is," I agreed, allowing him to shield me from the downpour. "I'm visiting my daughter, Rebecca. She lives in apartment 1-B. "Of course, Mrs. Crawford," he replied, his smile unwavering. "I'll let her know you're here." He gestured towards the opulent lobby. "Please, come inside." The warmth inside was a stark contrast to the biting wind. As I shook off the rain, I observed the lobby with a newfound perspective. The plush velvet sofas, the shimmering chandelier, the abstract art adorning the walls, all mine. A strange sense of detachment washed over me. I was the owner of this palace, yet I felt utterly powerless. The doorman returned moments later. "Miss Crawford is on her way down, Mum." "Thank you," I murmured, my gaze fixed on the polished marble floor. I could see my reflection, a blurry image of a woman lost in thought. Was I being dramatic? Perhaps. But the sting of Rebecca's casual dismissal lingered, a persistent ache. Rebecca appeared, a vision of youthful exuberance in a bright pink sweater. "Mom," she exclaimed, rushing towards me. "Sorry to make you wait in the lobby. Julian's in the middle of a really important game." "It's fine, dear," I said, forcing a smile. "I understand." Did I? I wasn't sure anymore. "Let's head up," Rebecca said, linking her arm through mine. "I've got a bottle of champagne chilling. We can celebrate properly once Julian's finished." As we ascended in the sleek, Silent elevator. I couldn't help but think about the irony of it all. My daughter, living in luxury provided by me, oblivious to the source of her comfort, dismissing me for a video game. It was a ridiculous situation, almost comical. Inside her apartment, the aroma of takeout filled the air. Julian, headphones clamped over his ears, was hunched over his elaborate gaming setup in the guest room, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He barely acknowledged our presence. Rebecca, seemingly unfazed, poured two glasses of champagne. "Cheers, Mom," she said, raising her glass. "Happy birthday to me, happy birthday, sweetheart," I replied, clinking my glass against hers. The champagne tasted flat, the bubbles mirroring the hollowness in my chest. We chatted for a while, mostly about Rebecca's work and her plans for the future. Julian remained engrossed in his game, his grunts and exclamations punctuating our conversation. It was as though I were a ghost, a spectral presence flitting through their lives. Later, as Rebecca cleared the takeout containers, I excused myself to the living room. The couch, while comfortable, felt like a symbol of my displacement. I picked up a throw pillow, its soft fabric a stark contrast to the hardness I felt inside. I stared out the window at the city lights twinkling in the distance. A plan began to form, a slow, simmering ember of resolve. I wouldn't confront Rebecca directly. That wouldn't achieve anything. No, I needed a more nuanced approach. I closed my eyes, imagining the possibilities. This building, this entire complex, was under my control. The power, the subtle influence I wielded, was immense. A faint smile played on my lips. Rebecca wanted a birthday celebration. I'd give her one she'd never forget. It was time to remind her who really held the keys to this kingdom, and perhaps, just perhaps, Julian would learn a valuable lesson about respect as well. The wheels were in motion. The game, as they say, was afoot. The weak click of the lock echoed the hollowness in my chest. Rebecca's apartment door swung open just a crack, her face appearing in the sliver of space. "Mom, this is kind of a bad time." Her voice was tight, a forced smile plastered across her face. I pushed down the hurt. "Oh, honey, I know it's late, but I couldn't wait any longer. Happy birthday." I held out her gift, a small velvet box containing the antique locket I'd promised her. Rebecca barely glanced at it. "Thanks, Mom," she mumbled, taking the box without opening it. "Look, Julian's in the middle of something important. Can we make this quick?" "Julian?" "Of course." I peeked past her into the apartment. The glow of the computer screen bathed the living room in an eerie light. Julian's silhouette hunched over his keyboard, headphones clamped over his ears. Empty pizza boxes and energy drink cans littered the coffee table. "I just flew 2,000 miles to see you, Rebecca," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "It's your birthday." Rebecca sighed dramatically. "I know, Mom, and I appreciate it, but Julian's got a big tournament tonight. He needs to focus." The implication hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I was the distraction. "So where am I sleeping?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Rebecca shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. "Well, Julian's using the guest room for his setup. He needs the space for his equipment, for optimal performance." She gestured vaguely toward the couch. You can sleep there. It's actually pretty comfortable. The couch. The lumpy, pull-out couch that smelled faintly of stale popcorn and Julian's lingering presence. The couch I'd specifically requested she replace when she moved in. The couch, I repeated, a tight knot forming in my stomach. Rebecca winced. Just for tonight, Mom. Promise. She gave me a quick, apologetic hug, a pat on the shoulder that felt more like a dismissal. Gotta go. Don't want to distract Julian. Love you. And with that, she disappeared back into the apartment, leaving me standing in the doorway, the velvet box feeling heavy in my hand. The click of the door shutting felt final, like a lock turning on something more than just the apartment. I took a deep breath. The cool night air a welcome contrast to the stifling disappointment that filled me. The city lights twinkled below, a mocking reminder of the celebratory dinner I'd envisioned. The laughter and shared memories that now seemed like a distant dream. Looking down at the velvet box, I ran my thumb over the smooth surface. This locket, a family heirloom, was meant to symbolize the enduring bond between a mother and daughter. Instead, it felt like a cruel joke. A wave of anger washed over me, quickly followed by a cold, quiet resolve. I wouldn't let this slide. I wouldn't let them treat me like an inconvenience, an afterthought. Rebecca clearly didn't realize the power dynamic at play here, the quiet leverage I held. She didn't know who truly owned this building, this very apartment she now called home. She didn't know that the comfortable life she enjoyed, the life that allowed her to dismiss her own mother on her birthday, was built on a foundation I had laid. Turning away from the closed door, I walked toward the elevator, my steps firm and purposeful. I needed a moment to myself to gather my thoughts, to plan my next move. The city lights below no longer seemed mocking. They seemed to shimmer with possibility, a promise of a different kind of celebration, one where respect and appreciation were not just expected, but demanded. I pulled out my phone, a small smile playing on my lips. Time to make a few calls. Time to remind Rebecca exactly who she was dealing with. Rain lashed against Rebecca's living room window, mimicking the storm brewing inside me. 2,000 miles I'd flown for her birthday, only to be relegated to the pull-out couch. Mom, Julian really needs the guest room for his setup, Rebecca had said, her voice apologetic but firm. It's important for his streaming career. Now, 2 days into my visit, I surveyed the wreckage of their so-called adult life. Dirty dishes piled precariously in the sink, attracting fruit flies. Empty takeout containers littered the coffee table, and the air, thick with the stale scent of instant noodles and unwashed laundry, hung heavy around me. Julian, glued to his computer screen in the guest room, hadn't emerged since breakfast, a breakfast I'd prepared. Incidentally, the rhythmic click-clack of his keyboard punctuated the otherwise oppressive silence. Rebecca, honey, where are the clean towels? I called out, trying to keep my voice even. Oh, I should be in the hallway closet, she replied, her voice muffled by the closed bedroom door. I haven't had a chance to do laundry yet. I sighed, pushing myself up from the uncomfortable couch. My back ached, a constant reminder of my less than ideal sleeping arrangements. The hallway closet, when I finally found it, resembled a disaster zone. Towels, clothes, and what appeared to be a deflated inflatable pool toy were crammed haphazardly onto the shelves. I rummaged through the chaos, eventually finding a relatively clean towel. As I made my way back to the living room, the sound of Julian's voice boomed from the guest room. "Rebecca, where's my energy drink? I told you to keep them stocked." Rebecca's meek reply floated back. "I'll get it, honey. Just finishing up in here." I watched as she hurried from the bedroom, a can of energy drink in hand, and practically tiptoed into the guest room. The door clicked shut behind her. I sat back down on the couch, a wave of sadness washing over me. This was my daughter's life, catering to a man-child who couldn't even locate his own beverages. The rain outside intensified, mirroring the tightening in my chest. I'd worked hard my entire life, built a successful business, and provided for Rebecca, giving her every opportunity. And this was how she chose to live, in squalor, subservient to a boy who treated her like a glorified maid. A sudden clang from the kitchen startled me. Rebecca emerged, her face flushed. "Sorry, Mom," she mumbled, picking up the broken pieces of her coffee mug. "I'm such a klutz. Are you all right, dear?" I asked, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just tired," she replied, avoiding my gaze. "Julian's got a big tournament coming up, so things are a bit hectic." Hectic? This wasn't hectic. It was chaos, and my daughter, the bright, vibrant young woman I'd raised, was drowning in it. Something had to change. I retrieved my phone from my purse and tapped open the property management app. Scrolling through the list of buildings, I found the one Rebecca's building. A small smile played on my lips. Perhaps, just perhaps, this unfortunate situation presented a unique opportunity. An opportunity to teach Rebecca a valuable lesson about self-respect and about choosing the right partner. A notification popped up on the screen. "Unit for B rent overdue. For B, Rebecca's apartment." I tapped on the notification, a new idea forming in my mind. This wasn't how I'd envisioned spending my time on Rebecca's birthday, but sometimes life had a funny way of presenting unexpected solutions. I began drafting a message to the building manager, a carefully worded request that would set my plan in motion. The rain continued to beat against the window pane, but the storm inside me had begun to subside, replaced by a quiet resolve. Rebecca would learn. She would learn that self-respect was worth more than any video game tournament, and that true love didn't involve catering to someone else's every whim. It was time for a little adjustment. The floral scent of Rebecca's birthday cake still hung in the air, a sickeningly sweet contrast to the bitter taste in my mouth. "Rebecca," I began, my voice trembling slightly, "I'm your mother. I came here to see you for your birthday. You want me to sleep on the couch so your boyfriend can have a room for his video games." She avoided my gaze, fiddling with the ribbon on a gift bag. "It's just Julian needs the space, Mom. He's got a big tournament coming up. It's important." I looked around the spacious apartment, the high ceilings, the gleaming granite countertops. "Important," I echoed, the word hanging heavy in the air. "More important than your own mother visiting for your birthday." Rebecca sighed dramatically. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. It's just a couch." "It's not just a couch," I countered, the anger finally starting to boil over. "It's the principle. I flew 2,000 miles to celebrate with you, and you're treating me like an afterthought." Julian emerged from the guest room, headphones dangling around his neck. He gave me a cursory nod. Everything set up, babe, Rebecca asked him, her face brightening as if a switch had been flipped. He grinned, oblivious to the tension simmering between me and Rebecca. Yeah, the lag is gone. This is perfect. Thanks, Rebecca. He squeezed her shoulder and disappeared back into the room, leaving me feeling even more invisible. He said thanks to you, I pointed out, my voice tight. Not to me, the one who, unbeknownst to him, actually owns this entire building. Rebecca rolled her eyes. Mom, seriously, you're still on that. It's not a competition. It's not about competition. Rebecca, I said, forcing myself to take a deep breath. It's about respect, basic human decency. She shrugged, picking at a loose thread on the sofa cushion. Look, I appreciate you coming. Really, I do. But Julian's career is important, and I'm not. I asked, the hurt I was feeling finally breaking through my composed facade. Rebecca opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off. You know, I've always tried to support you, Rebecca. I helped you furnish this very apartment. Remember, that ridiculously expensive Italian leather sofa you're so fond of. She nodded slowly, a flicker of unease in her eyes. Yes, Mom, I know. And that state-of-the-art gaming setup Julian is currently enjoying in the guest room. I helped with that too, I continued, my voice now dangerously calm. Rebecca's eyes widened slightly. Mom, what are you saying? I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. I'm saying, Rebecca, that perhaps it's time I reevaluated my investments. I stood up, smoothing down my dress. I'm going for a walk. I need some air. As I reached the door, Rebecca called out, Mom, wait. But I didn't stop. I needed time to think, to plan. I stepped out into the hallway, the cool evening air a welcome relief against my flushed skin. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Hello, Mr. Henderson. It's Arlene Crawford. I have a few adjustments I'd like to make regarding one of my properties. I paused, a new sense of resolve hardening my voice. Specifically, apartment for B. I hung up and looked back at Rebecca's closed door, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. The wheels were in motion. Rebecca wanted to treat me like I was insignificant, like I was just some elderly relative she had to tolerate. She had no idea the power I held, the strings I could pull, and she was about to learn. Tomorrow was the start of a long weekend, a holiday weekend in fact, and I had a feeling it was going to be a very memorable one for both of us. The next morning, the aroma of burnt toast filled Rebecca's apartment. Julian makes interesting culinary choices, Rebecca said, wrinkling her nose as she waved the dish towel at the smoke detector. Hope you slept well on the couch, Mom. Julian emerged from the kitchen, a sheepish grin on his face. Sorry about the near fire hazard, he mumbled, holding out a blackened piece of toast. Want some? I politely declined. I think I'll grab a coffee and a pastry downstairs, I said, forcing a smile. Rebecca, honey, why don't you join me? We can catch up properly. Rebecca glanced at Julian, who was engrossed in setting up his gaming equipment. Actually, Mom, Julian and I were going to practice some strategies this morning. He's got a big tournament coming up. Oh, of course, I said, trying to hide my disappointment. Well, perhaps later then. I retrieved my purse, feeling a strange mix of anger and resolve simmering beneath my surface. As I headed out the door, I could hear Julian's voice booming from the living room. "Rebecca, pass me that energy drink." And the controller, the one with the custom buttons. I paused in the hallway, a plan slowly forming in my mind. I reached into my purse and retrieved my phone, dialing a number I hadn't used in a while. "Mr. Henderson, it's Arlene Crawford." "Yes, everything is fine. Just a small adjustment I need to make regarding apartment 3B. I paused, listening to Mr. Henderson's reply. He was the building manager, blissfully unaware that Arlene Crawford, apartment owner, and Mrs. Crawford visiting her daughter were the same person. "Yes," I continued, lowering my voice. "I've decided to schedule some essential maintenance in that unit today. Something to do with the electrical wiring. I understand it's short notice, but it really needs to be done. It's a safety issue." I disconnected the call, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. The local coffee shop was bustling, but I found a quiet corner to enjoy my pastry and plan my next move. Rebecca clearly didn't understand the value of respect, the importance of family over video games. Well, it was time for a little lesson, and I had just the tools to teach it. Returning to the building an hour later, I saw Mr. Henderson talking to Julian and Rebecca in the hallway. Julian looked agitated, his gaming headset dangling around his neck. Rebecca was wringing her hands, clearly distressed. "But where are we supposed to go?" she was saying. "We can't just leave all our stuff here." Mr. Henderson shrugged, holding up a clipboard. "Building orders, ma'am. Electrical inspection. Whole unit needs to be vacated for at least 24 hours. Safety regulations." I approached them, feigning surprise. "Oh my goodness, what's going on here?" Rebecca rushed over to me, her face a mixture of frustration and panic. "Mom, they're saying we have to evacuate the apartment. Some kind of electrical inspection. Where are we supposed to go? Julian has a tournament this weekend. He needs to practice." I put a comforting hand on her arm. "Don't worry, sweetheart," I said, my voice laced with mock concern. "You can stay with me at my place." I subtly emphasized my place, letting the words hang in the air. Rebecca looked at me, her eyes wide. "Really, Mom? Are you sure?" I smiled. "Of course, dear. Family always comes first." Julian cleared his throat. Mrs. Crawford, that's really generous of you. But I'm not sure my equipment." He gestured towards the apartment, his face a mask of anxiety. "Oh, don't you worry about your equipment, Julian," I said, my voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. "I'm sure we can find a safe place for it. In the storage locker, perhaps." Rebecca looked at Julian, then back at me. The realization seemed to dawn on her slowly. The apartment, the sudden electrical inspection, my seemingly innocent offer of hospitality. It was all starting to click into place, Mom. She started, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is this?" I simply smiled, patting her hand. "Let's get your things packed, shall we? We wouldn't want to hold up Mr. Henderson." As we entered the apartment, I caught Julian's eye. He looked defeated, resigned. He knew he'd been outmaneuvered, and I, for the first time in days, felt a sense of satisfaction. This was just the beginning. I had a whole weekend planned, and it wasn't going to involve any video games. It was going to involve some quality family time. My kind of quality family time. The morning sunlight streamed through Rebecca's apartment windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I watched them drift, a strange calmness settling over me after the turmoil of the previous night. Julian, still engrossed in his video game, hadn't even noticed I was awake. "Coffee's ready," Rebecca chirped from the kitchen, placing a mug on the coffee table in front of the uncomfortable pull-out couch I'd been relegated to. "Thanks, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep the weariness out of my voice. "Did Julian sleep well?" I asked, my eyes flicking towards the closed door of the guest room, my intended room. Rebecca shrugged. "He had a late-night tournament," she explained, her voice apologetic. "He really needed the quiet and the setup in there." I nodded, sipping the lukewarm coffee. It wasn't the lack of a proper bed that bothered me. It was the casual disregard, the unspoken message that Julian's gaming took precedence over my comfort, over my visit for Rebecca's birthday. "Big day planned?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful. Rebecca's face lit up. "Huge. Julian booked a table at that new rooftop restaurant everyone's talking about," she replied excitedly. "It's supposed to have amazing city views." I smiled, a genuine smile this time. "Sounds wonderful," I said. "I'm looking forward to it." As the day wore on, my mind raced, piecing together the puzzle pieces. I watched Rebecca and Julian, their interactions a strange mix of genuine affection and an almost unsettling dependency on each other's validation. Julian, completely oblivious to the subtle shift in my demeanor, continued his gaming marathon, occasionally emerging for food or to offer a distracted compliment to Rebecca. I listened patiently to Rebecca's excited chatter about her future plans that revolved almost entirely around Julian and his aspiration. It was then that I made a decision. This rooftop dinner wasn't just going to be a celebration of Rebecca's birthday. It was going to be a celebration of something else entirely, something she wouldn't soon forget. "Rebecca, dear," I said, interrupting her mid-sentence, "I need to run a quick errand before dinner. I'll meet you both at the restaurant at 8, all right?" Rebecca, slightly taken aback by my sudden departure, simply nodded. "Sure, Mom. See you there." As I stepped out of the apartment, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. "Michael," I said when the call connected. "It's Arlene. I need you to arrange something for me at the rooftop restaurant tonight. It's about table 22." I paused, a slight smile playing on my lips. "Let's just say I'm about to deliver a birthday surprise Rebecca won't forget." The rooftop restaurant was everything Rebecca had described and more. The city lights twinkled below, creating a magical backdrop for the elegant setting. I arrived a few minutes before 8, taking a seat at the bar and ordering a glass of champagne. I watched as Rebecca and Julian arrived, their faces glowing with anticipation. They were led to table 22, right in the center of the terrace, with a breathtaking view. I watched them from afar, sipping my champagne, the bubbles mirroring the rising excitement within me. As they settled in, I saw Michael, the restaurant manager, approach their table. He exchanged a few words with Rebecca and Julian, and then, with a flourish, presented them with a bottle of vintage champagne. Rebecca's eyes widened in surprise. "This is wow," she stammered, looking at Julian. He shrugged. equally bewildered. Michael then cleared his throat and addressed them again. "Mr. Julian, Ms. Rebecca," he began, his voice carrying across the terrace. "On behalf of the building's owner, Miss Arlene Crawford, we would like to extend our warmest congratulations on your recent engagement." He paused, allowing the words to sink in. Rebecca's jaw dropped. She looked over at me, her eyes filled with confusion. "Mom, what?" she started, but Michael continued. "Ms. Crawford has also instructed me to inform you that, as a token of her appreciation for being such valued tenants, she has decided to gift you with the entire month's rent, free of charge." Rebecca's face turned a shade of crimson. She looked from me to Julian and back again, speechless. I raised my glass in their direction, a small, knowing smile on my face. This wasn't just about the rent, or the champagne, or even the public announcement of their engagement, which, as far as I knew, hadn't happened yet. This was about respect. This was about reminding Rebecca that actions have consequences, and that sometimes the quietest players hold all the cards. "Enjoy your dinner, sweetheart," I mouthed across the terrace, the city lights reflecting in my eyes. The look on Rebecca's face, a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and a flicker of dawning understanding, was worth more than all the rooftop restaurants in the world. This little birthday surprise, I knew, was a lesson she wouldn't soon forget. And as I savored my champagne, I allowed myself a small, private victory. The game, after all, had just begun. The crisp December air nipped at my cheeks as I stood on the sidewalk, a small, satisfied smile playing on my lips. Rebecca and Julian were still inside the apartment, oblivious. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," I'd said calmly, my voice barely above a whisper. Before turning and walking out, Rebecca had stammered, "Mom, what are you talking about? Lawyer for what?" I simply offered a tight smile and a shake of my head. Julian, bless his clueless heart, had just stood there, mouth agape, holding a half-eaten slice of birthday cake. He probably thought it was about the parking ticket. Oh, Julian, if only you knew. The doorman, Miguel, tipped his hat. "Mrs. Crawford," he greeted warmly. "Everything all right. I'd known Miguel for years, since before Rebecca and Julian even moved into the building. He was a good man, always discreet." "Just fine, Miguel," I replied, my voice laced with a lightness I hadn't felt in days. "Just fine." I paused at the curb, glancing back up at the window of Rebecca's apartment, a 10th-floor corner unit with a stunning view of the city. The lights were still on, casting a warm glow. It was a beautiful apartment. My apartment. Well, not my apartment anymore, officially, but the entire building, that was a different story. The truth was, Rebecca had no idea that I owned the building. I'd purchased it as an investment a few years back, long before she decided to move to the city. When she told me about finding this amazing apartment, I'd played along, feigning surprise and delight. It had been amusing watching her rave about the amenities, the location, the responsive management. I'd even feigned frustration when she complained about a minor plumbing issue, muttering about slumlords. "They really need to get their act together," she'd huffed, oblivious to the fact that they was me. The charade had been easy to maintain. I'd instructed the building manager to treat Rebecca like any other tenant. No special treatment. In fact, if anything, I'd subtly hinted that she should be kept on her toes, just to build character. I wanted her to learn the value of $1, the importance of hard work. She'd always been a bitentitold. This whole episode with Julian and the couch had just been the culmination of it. Coming all this way for her birthday, only to be relegated to the sofa while her boyfriend commandeered the guest room for his gaming setup. It was the final straw. I hailed a cab, settling into the back seat with a sigh. "Airport, please," I told the driver. As the city lights blurred past, I replayed the scene from a few minutes earlier in my head. The look on Rebecca's face when I'd mentioned the lawyer priceless. She'd finally realized I wasn't bluffing. Julian had finally stopped chewing his cake. But you said you liked the couch," Rebecca had sputtered, her voice rising in panic. "You said it was comfy." "It is," I'd conceded, my voice smooth as silk. "But that's beside the point, Rebecca. It's about respect. It's about common decency. It's about treating your mother with a modicum of consideration, especially on her birthday." "But Julian needs the space for his streaming," she'd protested weakly. "He's got a big tournament coming up." I'd raised an eyebrow. "And I needed a bed, Rebecca. A bed in the guest room that I, indirectly, provide for you." The cab driver cleared his throat, breaking my reverie. "Almost there, Mum," he announced. I smiled, the city skyline receding in the rearview mirror. It was time to go home. But my work here wasn't done. Not quite. Back in my own comfortable bed, I reached for my phone and dialed a number. "Good evening, David," I said when my lawyer answered. "I have a few adjustments like to make to the lease agreement for apartment 10B. I paused, a slow smile spreading across my face, effective immediately. "Certainly, Mrs. Crawford," David replied. "What changes did you have in mind?" "Well," I began, my voice taking on a steely edge. "Firstly, I believe a significant rent increase is in order. Let's say triple the current rate. And as for the lease term, let's make it month to month. I'll be sending a formal notice to the tenants first thing tomorrow morning." I hung up the phone, the silence of my bedroom amplifying the quiet hum of satisfaction that resonated within me. Rebecca wanted to prioritize her boyfriend's gaming career over her own mother's comfort. Fine. Let's see how Julian's big tournament plays out when they're scrambling to make rent. Let's see how long their love lasts when faced with the harsh realities of the real world, a world I, incidentally, controlled. It was Rebecca's birthday, indeed, and it was a lesson she wouldn't soon forget. The apartment was a gift, and gifts, as everyone knows, can be taken away. Merry Christmas, Rebecca.